Hello and good morning, everyone. Greetings from Bahrain. My name is Ghada Ahmed, Director of the English Language Center at the University of Bahrain. We would like to welcome you all to the English Language Center's third international conference, Extending Higher Education Learning Beyond the Classroom, Integrating Life and Employability Skills. The edition of this year's conference is unique for a number of reasons. First, because we've received an amazing response of excellent paper submissions, and so we had to extend the conference to a third day. And also, because we have a big number of audience, approximately 1,000 registered from 55 different countries around the world, from Japan to the US and Mexico, including some countries which we have attendees for the first time, such as the Maldives, Vietnam, and Colombia. So thank you all for taking time out and being here with us. Now, having this big number of participation is partially due to the fact that this conference is held virtually. So it is convenient for most people to attend. But I think most importantly, it's due to the trending topic we are addressing. The rapidly shifting horizon of higher educational institutions and the challenging context of COVID-19 concerns and constraints has had a far-reaching impact on both the labor market and higher education. And over these 3 days, we have a unique opportunity to inspire a deeper exploration of pedagogical approaches, effective methodology, and implementation of best practice strategies for higher education and industry collaboration. This opening session is featuring key people from the industry and education, whom I will be introducing in a while. But first, we would like to thank them for kindly accepting our invitation to participate in the interactive panel discussion today, despite their busy schedule. We would also like to thank Cambridge University Press, National Geographic Learning, Pearson, and Nottingham Trent University for their tremendous support. And a big thank you to the amazing team that I have been working with since the first edition of our international conferences. The efforts made by the organizing committee led by Mrs. Delal Al-Hiti contributed substantially to the quality of this web conference. And now I'm sure everyone is just eager to start with our program, so let's keep moving with the panel discussion entitled Higher Education and Industry Partnership, Mapping Potential Employability Skills to 2030 Industry. For this panel, the ELC is proud to host the following special guests. His Excellency, Professor Riyad Hamza, President of University of Bahrain, Mr. Abdul Hakim Al-Khayyat, Managing Director and CEO of the Kuwait Finance House in Bahrain, named CEO of the year 2020. Mr. Jeff Hancock, Director of Education Reform for the Economic Development Board of Bahrain. Mr. Simon Peters, Business Development and Program Director, Middle East Education Services, Tribal. Ms. Dana Bukhamas, Human Resources Director of Zain Bahrain. And Mr. Hisham Abul Fath, Head of Corporate Communications at the National Bank of Bahrain. We are also honored that Mr. Cameron Mirza has joined us today to moderate this panel. Mr. Cameron has a vast international experience within the UK and the Middle East, including working at the highest levels of reform. In 2011, Mr. Cameron was appointed Director for Projects for Higher Education Council in Bahrain, and following that, in 2016, he was appointed Head of Strategy at the University of Bahrain. Mr. Mirza embarked on a new challenge in 2019 when he was appointed UAE Director for Nottingham Trent University in a joint project with the UAE focusing on graduate skills. Right now, Mr. Cameron is the USAID Chief of Party responsible for pre-service teacher education in Jordan. While he no longer works or lives in Bahrain, his heart will always be at the University of Bahrain. Over to you, Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Radha. I'm not sure why I only got my bio read out. And we've got such amazing people on our panel. I'm very happy to be back with many old friends today, and you know, and delighted we've got such a great opening panel to kick off what I'm sure will be a great conference yet again from the ELC. just before we get into this, because we want to hear from our esteemed panelists today. We're lucky to have such a great panelists with such experience. I just want to set the scene for today's conversation. And when we talk about employability skills in the classroom, now it's probably most, this is a critical issue that we're facing right now as a global issue, not just in Bahrain. I just want to focus just for a minute on some data and some facts just to set the context for this. Within the Middle East region, youth unemployment at the moment runs at over 30%, which is, according to the World Bank, one of the highest in the world. If we look at the 2019 Bayet.com graduate survey for the Middle East, the highest levels of dissatisfaction with graduates concerns the curriculum and teaching methods. 76% say that finding a job is a #1 challenge. And within the GCC, 49% of graduates are unprepared to enter the workforce. Now, what are the CEOs saying? And we're delighted, obviously, we've got some industry partners as part of the panel today. So what are employers saying? 80% of employers in the Gulf region say that there's a shortage of skills. 70% are focusing on improving their own workers' knowledge, particularly of technology. Microsoft is saying that within the next 5 years, 150 new digital jobs will be created, particularly in cyber, AI, data, software development. So that's where we're at today. World Economic Forum, top 3 skills for 2025 are as follows: analytical skills and innovation, active learning and learning strategies, and complex problem solving. So the real global trend now is moving away from the traditional degree base that historically we've seen in terms of doing degrees. We've seen now, for example, Google creating their own degree, saying you don't need to go to university. You can come to us and within 6 months, you'll be ready for the workforce. We talk about analytical thinking and innovation being the #1 skill required for 2025, yet the region is showing very low levels of innovation. Therefore, my question for our audience today seems to me like the region has a GPS problem, a global professional standards problem. Now, I'd like to kick off with the custodian of the National University of the Kingdom of Bahrain, Professor Riyad. It feels weird to be talking to you and not being next to you, but as the president of the National University, we've seen your numbers, the numbers of students rise over the last decade exponentially. Yet despite that, University of Bahrain is ranked in the top 2% globally for employer reputation. It seems that we have a graduate employment problem. I'd like to hear from you in terms of how are you supporting students and graduates to be ready for the workforce?
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Cameron. It's really always a pleasure to see you and to talk to you. And also, let me start by saying it gives me a great pleasure and honor to be with the esteemed, distinguished guests, and also my thanks and appreciation to Dr. Ghada Ahmed for the great efforts and her team that they put into organizing this wonderful conference. And I'm sure that will be great to hear the recommendations and the experiences of different participants. So having said that, I will try to be a little bit selfish and not talk much and try to listen more from the guests so we can benefit from what they say. But let me just say that the University of Bahrain, to cope with this situation, we recognized this situations a few years back, and that's when we had a transformation plan, which was 2016-2021, where we identified a lot of strategic goals. Some of those actually, even then, trying to look into the fourth industrial revolution and how can we prepare for that. And, but let me just say that it is always important to have the compass right on the target. And that is, let me start by saying that looking at the Future of Jobs Report 2020, published in October 2020 by the World Economic Forum, and let's see what people are recognizing, and then what the University of Bahrain have tried and we're trying to do. In terms of increasing demand, of the job increasing demand, talking about data analysts, scientists, AI and machine learning specialists, big data specialists, digital marketing and strategy specialists, automation specialists, business development professionals, digital transformation, business services and administration manager, and so on, robotic engineering, for example, risk management specialists. Now, these jobs are there is increased demand on these jobs. Now, University of Bahrain, or for the fact for any university, should map what they do, what they offer the students, what's needed for in the labor market. And so it is really a mapping exercise for any university. Now, for the University of Bahrain, what we did is we tried to first, before we go into the skill, even academic programs, we started new programs in PhD in computing and information sciences, big data science and analytics, computer science, cloud computing, telecommunication and network engineering, even real estate development and property development, business analytics, bachelor degree in entrepreneurship. So these are the university programs trying to redesign and re-offer new programs that match the real market, that will give our students and graduates a chance for employability. Now, what the university also focused on in the ecosystem, the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure also, to support what we're trying to do. The university, for example, is the largest now university with 30,000 students, is going all in on Amazon Web Services. The university is it's in the final phase to move all its core applications like a student information system, correspondence management system, homepage portal, and so on to AWS. So, and of course, the cloud benefits is tremendous. In addition, we are doing things to support the skills, to give students the skills. Micro-credentials is very important. And for example, one of the things we do is we have the AWS academies. We have the first academy in the Middle East and the MENA region. Through this academy, for example, our students are enrolled in courses to acquire and expand the skills and credential needed for career in cloud computing technology. We also, like I said, we developed the bachelor degree in cloud computing. Another thing is that we have a coding academy with UNDP and Microsoft. Micro credentials are viable strategy to integrate employability and soft skill development. Reskilling and upskilling and professional development in the following areas: digital technologies, data science, like we said, and learning machine, blockchain, quantum computing. These are the things that we're trying to focus on. Forward thinking and developing in skills. This is the thing. We have, in addition to that, a business incubator to help students have this entrepreneurship spirit, to also get advantage of what they learned, whether in soft skills or also in their academic program. I'll pause here for a minute because to give everybody else a chance, and maybe we can go and expand on this in a little while.
Thanks, Professor Riyad. Jeff, come to you on this one from a kind of macro perspective from the EDB. First from Professor Riyad there, micro credentials, technology focused, skills-based, competency-based learning. What's the view? You're looking across the whole sector here. What's the challenge, and what are the things that we should be doing to perhaps overcome these challenges, Jeff?
Thank you, Cameron, and thank you, Professor Riyad, and to everybody who's put this conference together. It's very impressive to hear what the University of Bahrain are doing. It goes to show that, you know, if we can give the universities some freedom to operate, some autonomy to make those decisions, and to be flexible in their approach, then they will go on. They know what needs to. Dr. Riyad knows as well as anyone else does. From a government perspective, in terms of the system, we have to enable the universities to operate. That means giving them the right students, giving them the freedoms to actually to run the programs they want to do, and to make those networks with industry and so on. One of the things, when you look at the system that we've been grappling with, in order to actually enable our universities, our strong universities like the UOB to operate, we have to look at regulation, because there are many challenges in terms of regulation that prevent universities being able to do that, because young people want to get accredited for their programs, they want to get recognition, and we have to look at that. We have to be able to see what the regulator views and bringing the regulations and the policy up to the 21st century. So from our system perspective, we want to make sure that we are trying to actually take a tertiary view, not just an academic view. So we're increasing pathways, bringing skills and opportunities in, looking at alternative routes into employment, not just through the university, but through other means, particularly on the job training, apprenticeship programs, and so on. So we want to broaden that base. And in particular, we want to give the universities freedom to operate in the way they want to, which is probably making them smaller, more nimble, but highly focused on the things they want to do. I think the last 2 decades has been about expansion and taking everybody. Now I think there needs to be greater selectivity in operating that. And also, I think the micro-credentialization of programs is really important, and that requires those links and networks with industry that will need to be developed. And from our perspective, we want to see good data coming from industry to actually inform our institutions about what they should be running. And these are all the initiatives that we're running at a government level.
Jeff, thank you. So, you know, that's interesting, coming at it from a kind of structural reform perspective. And I think that's probably true that universities could probably do even better with some freedoms. I'm going to come to Simon now. Simon, you know, tribal, you're working in all parts of the world. I'd be interested to hear from you. What are the trends that you're seeing? How are countries trying to affect change when it comes to graduate employability? What are the sort of interesting things that you can pull out for us?
Thank you, Cameron. Yeah, I think it's hard in answering that question not to reflect on the current situation, which has had a dramatic impact on everybody. And indeed, that's why we're operating this great conference in this way. So from our point of view, we've noticed that there's a great deal more effort in collaborating between employers and higher education, and tertiary education. That's been significant. Significant investment in work-based learning. That's been increasingly, so the notion of degree apprenticeships and that kind of thing. I think the other thing that, just speaking from the work we do in UK and Australia, there's been a sizable government investment right now. So while some countries in this region have put the brakes on spending, spending obviously has increased, particularly in the education and training space. And indeed, some of our contracts in England have expanded, particularly in those that are providing online digital content in terms of improving teaching and learning. So from my perspective, those are the significant takeaways where things here seem to have slowed down. There's been a real focus of industry and educators pulling together, government investing behind that. And I think also we've seen quite a lot of adaptability in terms of sector expertise. So a lot of people are transferring into different sectors. Obviously, things like the care industry have increased in the UK away from hospitality. But increasingly, I've seen people who are in one sector able to jump across to other sectors in higher numbers because they've got the right transferable skills, particularly in IT and digital development. So those are the main takeaways I would think, Cameron, that I could give you from my perspective as an education and training delivery organisation.
Thanks, Simon. Thank you. You made a good point about more kind of a higher education industry collaboration. So I'm going to come to our colleagues in the private sector now. We're lucky to have banking and telecoms covered. I'm going to come to you first, Hamid, and then Dana, then Hisham. It seems to me, looking at the data, that you guys are not particularly happy with the quality of the graduates that you're getting. It seems to me that the data tells me that you get graduates and you've got to spend a lot of time training them up. From the ground, and this is really important to hear from the employers, from the ground, what are the feelings that you're getting about the quality of your graduates, and where are the gaps in particular in terms of skills? Start with Hamid, then Dana, then Hisham.
Cameron, I think you're referring to Mr. Abdul Hakim Al Khayyab.
Yeah, sorry. Abdul Hakim, sorry, yes, please.
Okay. All right, sorry. Okay. Well, actually, we have mitigated this significantly by opting to go in an economy that has got lots of good graduates but less jobs. We have the privilege of choosing the best. And so when you choose the best, shortcomings are not very clear. And what's coming from the educational system does not manifest itself very clearly. So in the bank here, fresh graduates, we hire only those who are like 95%, 97%, with high potentials of passing professional certification tests. So actually our diagnosis would not be representative of the outcome that comes from the education system. However, having been in the bank for such a long time, we have had our share of some of the ones that have slipped through, and you know, we ended up hiring for one reason or another, wrong assessment, or you know, pressed need for a given area. We believe there is a huge gap between what the market needs, and what the universities and other educational centers are providing. We have moved so much into theory that probably does not have much application in this part of the world than going into the specific needs that face employers today. Starting from the very basic writing skills to the very high-end services of, you know, coding something on an urgent basis because you need to face up with a given dilemma and temporarily you need solutions. And that is exactly because there isn't much communication between the educational centers and the working place. I mean, I have met Dr. Riyal, we met Dr. mashallah, but there aren't many scheduled meetings between universities and other educational centers and the industry. And I bet that out of those scheduled meetings that would happen regularly, brainstorming these issues would give you significant insight into what's needed and how you can adapt yourself to the needs of the markets. Unfortunately, universities today think that that is the work of polytechnics. And I think this is a very, very narrow view and a very prejudiced one. At the end of the day, what we need is what impacts people's lives, what enhances their, spending power, get them a job, leave them, get them out of poverty. These are the ideas that we need to think about, and this can really be mitigated or enhanced in reducing those sorts of problems by communicating. And so if we were to communicate, we will close that gap of the many shortcomings that come out of the graduates, and probably certain structural issues that needs to be tackled. Issues of admission, for example. Admission today is very easy in universities, and that gives false hopes to students as well as employers. Admissions have to change. People who don't fit to go to a university have to go to another space to educate themselves, get the thing that would help them, help themselves in the future. I think this is not happening through discussions by educators, employers, and so on. Some of these problems happen because of politicians putting their way through and impede the proper outcome. Now there isn't such a thing that separating politics from education, because globally constituents decide who they elect, and they need to interfere. But this is part of the problem, and we need to honestly discuss these things so that we overcome the shortcomings that come out of the educational system. There are many, but I don't think it's we have all the time to discuss them.
Sure.
But they are in many cases very acute, and the percentages that you have mentioned, that 80% of the people who graduate in the Middle East don't have the proper skills. If the number the ratio I'm quoting is the percentage is correct, but this is a serious problem, and this has to do with the admission to universities and
Sure.
and the continuous check on whether they are fit and proper to continue.
Thank you. That's really really insightful. Hisham, come to you. National Bank of Bahrain. You have a great tradition of hiring graduates, and you're a great supporter to the university, I know. What's your take in terms of the graduate issue? Is there an issue, and what are the gaps that you're seeing on the ground?
Thank you, Cameron. First of all, hi everybody, and I'm honored to be part of this session with all of you. Many of you who I've worked with before, or been my mentors or teachers at some point in time, or my employer at some point in time. Thank you, Cameron. I think you pose a very important question. I mean, there are many issues, and I won't call them issues. I'll call them miscommunication, like Mr. Muhammad says, Abdul Hakim. I will call them mapping the gaps, as Dr. Riyad, Professor Riyad referred to. I think there is a mismatch between, not a complete mismatch, but I think there is a gap in terms of what is being taught and how it's being taught. Because if we refer to, we're all taught from textbooks, etc., and we will all achieve our passing grades and achieve our certifications with whatever grades we come across. But I think we are at an era, at a phase in our lives, and the whole world is in a spin-off stage, and we need to also be we pay attention to how we were taught, because that's quite important to build something essential that is missing out. And Dana probably would and could elaborate on that from a pure employer perspective, being the director of HR at Zain, is the soft skills. We face a lot of issues in our organizations when it comes to soft skills. I mean, university does not teach you crisis management. It will teach you textbook crisis management, all right? But where are the manuals? What happens in real life scenarios? The emotional intelligence is of extreme importance working for any organization. And the bigger the organization, we like to refer to office politics, but emotional intelligence takes care of that because you learn a lot of soft skills. Now, I'll tell you what, the University of Bahrain, and Dr. Riyad, thank you for bringing out many of the points that you've mentioned. One of the initiatives that Dr. Riyad ensured that is actually applied at the University of Bahrain recently was to ensure that an X percentage of lecturers at any course at any given point in time is actually done through part-time lecturers who are part of the industry, who are part of providing real life, real factual case scenarios. And that's very important because we're referring to bridging the gap of what happens or what's being taught in the classroom and what actually happens on the ground. Now, these are very important elements to take into consideration. See, then you pose certain questions. Who would you hire? Who would you hire? Would you, if you've got two candidates coming across to you, all right, who would you hire? A person who's got an acronym next to his name, and just because he's got that diploma, BSc, MBA, PhD, with all due respect to all professions and all the hard work and smart work that goes into attaining those academic qualifications, or would you hire a person who is on the ground, been there, done that, and ticks a very important, as Mr. Abdul Hakim says, a pressing need for the institution to actually make happen. Because, and again, you're talking about, for example, at financial institutions, professional certifications are quite important as well, because there are certain gaps, certain jobs that you need those professional certifications. So the question is there a gap between professional certifications and academic certifications? Now, if every university in the world maps the requirements, as what Dr. Riyad says, map the requirements of whatever the market needs and requires, then that gap is closed, because it is no longer an academic qualification versus a practical or pragmatic certification, because then you need to ensure that the people who graduate are actually fit to work. And the terminology fit to work has many attributes that we've seen, all right? You want to put somebody who wants to lead within the institution. Now, don't you need him to have a bit of personality? Isn't charisma very important when it comes to meeting? Dana, how many times you and I, when we worked with Zain, we went to meetings and I needed to pitch an idea or a thought. It wasn't how great the thought or the idea or the proposal or the initiative that we brought across. It was how did we pitch that idea to ensure closing all the gaps, ticking all the right boxes, and making sure that that is a bulletproof presentation. Presentation skills is another point. I mean, I teach sales at the University of Bahrain, and one of the courses is called Selling Techniques, and they are a part-time instructor. And one of the really many items that was in that textbook that I dwelled and insisted for the students to comprehend was relationship management, and how important relationship management is in everything that you do. It's not about the sale, it's about the credibility that comes with the relationship. It's the faith, the trust that comes in that relationship. All these soft skills, all these and we call them employability skills because they are all needed. And that makes a difference in the real world between employing a potential manager or a potential leader that actually leave his fingerprints all over. Thank you.
Thank you, Hisham. Great. Dana, Hisham's made some great points about employability skills. We can call them life skills. I mean, you're somebody who is passionate about young people, about supporting young people. We've worked together over the years on doing that. Well, from the perspective not just of Zain, but in terms of your role as somebody who is supporting young people develop their skills, what are the challenges that you're seeing, and what are the things that we should be doing to try and fix this situation?
So talking about youth and all of that, we have a great belief in youth. Zain in 2003 started with 70% youth, people with no experience. They are the one who built the organization, and they are the directors and the managers today. And we have around 93 to 95% Bahrainization, and most of them are graduates from University of Bahrain. What I wanted to say is that what we do first, and this is the reason of our success, I believe this is the secret of our success. Whenever we have a person joining the organization, the first thing we do, we help people to find their passion. What are they passionate about? And when somebody asks me what is the best, for example, specialization or discipline that I need to study, I said the thing that you can do best. What is your talent? What is your passion? What is your dreams? What is your purpose in this life? When you define that, everything else becomes easier. And this is what we miss, I believe. Because if you understand what you want really to do in your life, you will not spend a lot of time studying something that you don't have passion to. And you will be an average performer, a person who is just doing what he or she have to do, not passionate about that. And actual work in the organization, you need people with passion. You need people to come in the office and they are so happy that it's another day. And you cannot achieve that if you're taking your profession just for a living. It has to be more than that. You have to have a balanced life. So if I have time, let me share with you David example. So there is one person, his name is David. He used to work in one of our business partners, and everyone's saying David can solve this problem. He was in the technical team. So as much as people are talking about him, I wanted to see David, because why? He's the only person who can solve any technical problem. Hisham, you know David, do you remember? So I met him and I said, David, I just want to understand why you had all of this reputation. And he said, when I was 7, my parents found me really passionate about the technology and devices and all of that. And they gave me a device and they said, feel free, deconstruct it and build it again, find the pieces together and enjoy what you're doing. David, he came to university with 10 years of experience in the technical field. And how we can create that in the university? I believe if we can connect with the earlier stage of education and helping the youth at different stages and asking them this question: what is your talent? What are you passionate about? And help them to choose the profession that will help them to glow, will help them to exceed, will help them to contribute, not only learn. So this is what I believe. I believe if we found the passion of youth, this is what will help them to grow.
Dana, fantastic. No passion, no point, right? That's what it's about. No passion. We're in the next sort of 10, 15 minutes. I want to try and give everyone an opportunity to speak before we could go on for hours here, such as the level of conversation, but I'm going to be very specific with one question each for all of you. Professor Ria, we've heard, here's a couple of things to think about. No one in the global economy pays you for what you know, they pay you for what you can do with what you know. And the new transcript is academic credentials plus work experience. How is UOB giving young people a chance to get high quality work experience? And what are you doing about this notion or this perception that in the Arab world curriculums are 30 years out of date?
Okay, well, to ensure your graduates to really go smoothly into the labor market and find a proper job first, easily, and another one is relevant to what they have done. It's about what they learned in the university and the skills they have, and then the training, which is a very important thing. Now, the curriculum, to be always updated, is very important for the University of Bahrain. What we're trying to do now is we have members from the private sector or even public sector that are involved in hiring graduates to be in the councils and the department and on the level of the department, the college and the university council. As a matter of fact, just a few weeks ago, we had a set of newcomers to join all our academic councils. Now, that gives the opportunity for the different departments to know what's going on in the, let's say, big companies, banks, and so on, about what's needed to update new curriculums. We also subscribe to all high accreditation, international accreditation, to make sure that our the quality of education is up to standards. Now, in addition to that, as our students depart from, let's say, the university, we want to make sure they have good training. And that's why training and internship is mandatory at the University of Bahrain. And, you know, we have all our students at the College of, let's say, Health Sciences, nursing, X-rays, all these things, laboratories, they go and do their internship in hospitals in Bahrain. Bahrain Training College, BTC, and this is a college to prepare teachers to be teachers in the Ministry of Education. They have also internship in the public schools. Media students, they have also training, TV, newspapers, and so on. Oil and gas, petrochemicals, ALBA, BAPCO. These all receive our students for training. It is very important that the students gets the feel of the job beforehand. And that's why I guess one of the success stories about why some of students get it fast, they get the job fast, because they have been exposed. So it's exposure of the students to the real world, the labor market. This is what I can say for now, and you know, I'll pass it to you, Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Dr. Riyad. Simon, can I come to you? One of the issues being raised many times is around the quality of teaching. Now, Tribal have done a lot of work in terms of assessing institutions around the world. What are the shifts you're seeing in teaching? How does teaching perhaps need to adapt to developing and promoting different type of skill sets within students?
I think that's a critical issue. I think a lot of the systems of quality assurance will have to be revisited in the current climate because of the impact on COVID. Certainly from the inspections and quality assurance we've seen over the last few months, teachers don't have the skills needed for the current climate. That's not their fault, that's not how they were trained or hired. And increasingly, they're going to need the technological skills, and as you've already said, the adaptability of the curriculum, deliver it in different ways. So when we start the next round of school inspection, for example, in the UAE, we're going to have to critically look at how we're going to evaluate that, because initially, schools did their absolute best to, and higher education institutions, absolutely best to keep going. But over time, it became increasingly evident students were falling behind because of these reasons. And what I think we want to see is a more of an honest assessment of where students are, and really how delivery has got to be more flexible and adapted. I mean, I think, although we don't do a lot of institutional reviews at higher education, certainly from our perspective, higher education seems to have fared much better in this process. But certainly from schools' perspective, it's a difficult challenge, and one which they're really going to have to address over the next 12 months or so.
Thanks, Simon. I think that's a nice link, Jeff, because I think it's unfair sometimes that higher education gets criticised for the quality of its graduates when actually they're only dealing with what comes out of the school system. So if we think about solving this problem, you know, more holistically, from the school system perspective, there's two things that strike me quickly, Jeff: grade inflation and poor quality career advice. Yeah. Too many young people are being shortchanged by giving poor quality career advice. What are the things that, the policy perspective, we can be doing to address some of these issues?
Well, I think good careers advice should start very early. I mean, not at the end of the schooling process, probably early on in that process, probably in primary level. You should start to understand what students want to do. But also, I think it's important to actually break the cultural expectation that it's going to go to university and have a white-collar job, is to actually have data-driven careers advice. At the moment, particularly in the Gulf, although it's not particularly a Gulf problem, it's around the world, people tend to follow what their parents suggest, what the peer groups say, what they think is good, rather than looking at the realities. And I think one of the issues we have within Bahrain is that going to university is very attractive. Great inflation has actually meant that most people can go, low enrollment standards. And actually they saw an alternative. They could actually see the kind of money they could earn by training on the job. We have our chairman of the Chamber of Commerce owns a big construction company, and he's always talking about the actual salaries that people in technical trades can actually earn. And people are unaware of this. And I think there are cultural challenges here as well. But most certainly, careers need to start very early. It needs to be based around data. And one of the things that we have in Bahrain, well, the two key structural things that are going to transform this. One is the skills agency, which we're establishing, which will give us data-led decision-making based around what industry are telling us the demand is, to help us bridge that gap. And that itself will be driven by the labor market intelligence gathering system that we're establishing. So we can actually give young people options and choices. And if we give them those options and choices, the tertiary sector, both the universities and the training entities will have to collaborate, develop articulation routes to enable people to move between them. And again, I think that's essential for the future, because it shouldn't just be that, you know, if at first you don't succeed, right? Which tends to be the case at the moment, so people can move around. So careers education, absolutely vital, based around data, absolutely vital. And then the opportunity to have pathways between the various entities so people can adapt as they go through.
Thanks, Jeff. I mean, I'd like to now shift it over to colleagues from the private sector. Mr. Abdul Hakim, I think Kuwait Finance House, obviously, you know, an innovative firm. I'm interested to know what are you doing in terms of thinking, as we transition perhaps from the knowledge economy to the innovation economy, what are you doing within your business to upskill your staff, and how are you, what's your role in terms of working with universities to drive innovation? How do you see that playing out over the next few years? Sorry, you're muted. Yeah, could you, I think you need to unmute yourself. You're on, yeah.
Sorry.
No problem.
Okay, I'm compelled to go back to the interesting subject of, you know, some of what Hisham raised and others. I think before graduation, students probably take something like 120 hours to 140 hours, depending on which university they are in, what their specialty is. None of which, as far as my archaic knowledge of universities by now, none of which have to do with counseling these students early on. I mean, there is not an optional course. Maybe there are optional courses. I would make it mandatory for all students of all majors to take something on their career path. And as Jeff said, early on, it's foundation level, so that the student is aware of, you know, what things he still has a chance to switch, to change, to amend, but it has to be early on. Better to be before starting the university, but not everybody has got the chance or the determination or the family advice or friendly advisors to take that thing on seriously. So the university has to fill in that, because everybody is talking about it. Everybody sees that importance of that. And we all talk about, you know, something that needs to happen. Probably the private sector should take care of it. Specialized firms, probably counselors in universities. I don't think they would be able to cope with the quantum. So through formal courses, probably you can tackle this in a very efficient and effective way. This is one. Two, we have today lots of doctors, but come to the financial sector, they have very slim knowledge of how they should conduct their finances. They don't have the basics of taking a loan from a bank and what would be good for them, let alone opening their own clinic and deal with the finances that relates to that. And therefore, I don't fear students not having the good knowledge that they need to have in their own major. An accounting, a guy would know much about accounting. A finance guy would know much about finance. You know, biology, you know, majors would know. However, they all need finances in their lives. And if you go to universities, they don't offer this as mandatory. Finance today is mandatory in the lives of people so that it changes their lives. If you want to open a clinic in the future, you know what to do, or at least you have an idea. Now, coming to the technology gap, not all universities offer this as mandatory. There's technology for non-technology students. And today, if you are not equipped with the right technology going to the working place, you are illiterate, basically. And so how much of that knowledge you should get, the practical knowledge you should get whilst in the university to open up, you know, gates for you. Very important for me. This is how we see it in the working place. Now, what Hisham alluded to of organizational behavior is of paramount importance. I cannot overemphasize how important that is. That has to do with the failures of the 90% of the people in the working place, the non-development of the same segment. And if you notice, those people who succeed and continue to succeed are those who have greatest professional intelligence or organizational intelligence. This is a subject that has not gotten its share, good share of focus by universities. They barely teach that. If you were to teach your students early on about organizational behavior, probably they will be better students if you teach them that early on, not only for their working place, also for their university. And last but not least, is talking about gender equality. Girls are not taking their fair share in the working place. And that has to do with the counseling subject that we talked about, with the organizational behavior that we talked about. Most of our girls, not at my institution only, but most institutions, they recede when it comes to fights. They don't fight their way through. And unfortunately, they don't support each other. Boys support each other. They come, they fight, they ask for bonuses, they ask for grade promotion. Girls barely do that. Not because they don't like each other, but because they shy away. And this is a mistake. Why? Because they are not taught early on to defend themselves. And I think this gap is creating issues in the working place and therefore in the economic output. And this needs to change. Needs to change at the university level, probably at the school level, university level, but with organizational behavior, they will tone it right. So organizational behavior, leadership courses, all of these are part of, they should be part of the university curriculum. They are not to be dealt with later in life because it is too late, too little, too late then. I really, if you ask me, what is the one course that you want to introduce as mandatory for all sorts of majors in university, I would say organizational behavior. And there are tremendous number of books, required readings that could be made in these universities to choose from. Now, the technology aspect of it and how we're working it out, we are working it out because this is the trend globally and you cannot escape it. And if you don't, you are left out. Banking will not exist, or we tell our employees will not exist in 10 years in the way it has been in the past 100 years. Banking will be completely different. All banks will have to be digital. Yes, there will be some physical communication. There will be certain segments that will continue to do that, but probably 95% will be digital banking. Therefore, we're trying to work very hard with the industry. We don't have much cooperation with the universities because the brightest of the university students are not being taken care of today globally with variant degrees. Today, if you ask Dr. Riyad how many super intelligent students you have in the University of Bahrain, I'm sure he can identify a lot, especially through his tenure. Those super intelligent students, I mean, we have sat together and he was very welcoming of the idea that we create a consultancy group from within the universities. While they are students, they form that consultancy group and make money for the university, not for themselves, but rewarded in different ways. Some gifts, some, I don't know what, recommendations, this, that, summer jobs to further enhance their experience, but creating consultancies of all sorts of measures in the business arena, in the engineering arena of the different subsectors of engineering, in the other social sciences. If you were to do that, capture these bright students early on, especially when they are year 1, year 2, you will really get the gut out, and they will really benefit not only the university and businesses around them, but also society, society as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Abdul Hakim. Very insightful. And Hisham, Dana, we're going to come to you for final reflections. We're out of time, but it's only fair we come to you. Hisham, you're already teaching sales. I think you can now add teaching. You can also now teach organisational design and leadership. So there's 2 more modules for you. We'll speak to the Dean of Business. I'm sure we can fit you in. What are your final reflections on where we are today?
I mean, first of all, I'm grateful to Abu Muhammad, Mr. Abdul Hakim, to actually refer to the points that I've mentioned, because, I mean, it is just a reflection of what the true sort of work environments that we all work on, especially in the financial sector, where, as he respectfully has referred to, has evolved exponentially, especially during the COVID. So if this pandemic has taught us something, it's taught us that the way forward is just the way forward, and accepting exactly what the pandemic kind of brought about. I have one final remark to make to complement what Mr. Abdul Hakim has respectfully mentioned. I think while we focus a lot on the real world, as soon as anybody walks into the financial sector or any job, we give them the code of conduct kind of manual, and with that code of conduct manual, comes the issue, the values of transparency, ethics, teamwork, pride, all those different elements, respect. I think there is one element that has to be a mandated value that needs to be taught in every workforce, and also brought about from the kind of universities themselves in terms of the courses that are being brought about, which is the responsibility and accountability, i.e. it is the entrepreneurial kind of skills. It is that adventure, that spark inside, that eagerness to wherever I go, I need to make a difference. I need to take certain risks, of course, calculated risks and with full transparency. Otherwise, if I work for Mr. Hakim, I take risks without him knowing. I'm going to be the first one kind of to hold the door out. But I just mean, because there is reputational damage. But I mean, we need those people to kind of come in all fired up to make a difference, to bring about a new idea, to bring about a new venture. And this is a culture that once we instill inside of all of us, and who said that we need to be working for institutions in order for us to be successful? Let's not forget how the 80 or 75% of the world's economy depends on small and medium enterprises. Yet the points that we referred to earlier during these topics is teaching people how to is teaching students and of how to improve the human caliber, to ensure that when they're successful as people, they can be successful wherever and whenever they are, wherever they are.
Thank you, Sham. Dana, my old friend, my dear friend, how are you? Last point to you. You have the final say today.
Thank you so much. I can't agree more with Hisham and Mr. Abdul Karim. They said it all. I just want to sum what they've said. The organizational behavior, the character building that Hisham talked about, these are very essential. Entrepreneurial skills, these are very essential. We're coming from the private sector. We're the one who are dealing with the outcome of the universities, the character building, a character that you can trust, a character that can lead, a character that is passionate, not looking for a job as much as looking for a reason and contribution, not being right as much as being able to contribute. So all of these are very important for us to really go forward. The content is very important, but the content without these skills, it's not balanced. As if you are want to drive a car, you want to drive a bicycle, but you're studying the components, you're studying the history of the bike. If it is not balanced and complete, you will not have a good rider.
Thank you, Dana. I'll just end it by thanking all the panelists for, I mean, we could go on for hours, I'm sure, and I'm sure the audience would want us to, but we're out of time. I would say that we've learned a lot today: character, personality, organizational behavior, systems with all quality of teaching, curriculum, work-based learning. And I mean, I would say that the future of Bahrain is in safe hands with the University of Bahrain. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
مشكورين.
Thank you.
يعطيكم العافية.
مشكورين.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
يعطيكم ألف عافية. Thank you for the opportunity. مع السلامة.
دكتورة مشكورة.
Thank you so
مع
much.
السلامة.
Thank you. What an inspiring panel, providing timely insights needed to orient labor markets towards opportunity today and to map the jobs and skills of the future, tracking the pace of change and direction to move forward. A special thanks to our special guests, and our appreciation is also extended to Mr. Cameron for moderating this session. I have to mention that the overarching idea and the theme of this conference came into light because of a conversation that I had with Mr. Abdul Hakim Al-Khayyat last year in one of the events. So thank you so much for this. And we are really happy to see you here participating with us. Thank you, Your Excellency, for your support, and thanks everyone for joining us today. You are more than welcome to stay with us for the rest of our program, but if you have other commitments, feel free to go on.